Alright, hello everyone. Today I'm here joined by Dallas ProQuest finalist Jasiel Diaz. Gonna be helping me out do some commentary on our interesting Oldhim versus Viserai matchup that we had in the competitive team league.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad.
So, just for a little more context before we dive right in, it was the last week of regular play between the teams. We were up against the Top Deck Keep team, and this is the game that I had against Chris from that team. He was on Viserai, I was on Oldhim, and we had great performances by both Jimmy and Jake on our team earlier in the week that both won their games, so this was a win-and-in game for us.
Yeah, wish I got to say I'm very glad you won that, because then like the pressure would have been on me on the last game. And I was just like,
the order of things worked out very nicely in our favor for the for those kinds of nerves, because I had the other side of that where you had a game still coming, so even if I lost, we still had a chance. So
for sure, yeah,
worked out pretty nice.
Nice.
But yeah, with that, let's go ahead and dive into the game here. So on the initial roll, I roll fairly low, but actually do get to decide. And again, Oldhim Arsenal is so valuable with Crown that you definitely want to choose to go first, especially against Viserai, who loves to just start building up some early rune chants.
Oh yeah, like Viserai not going first is like so crucial. It's like really big for you.
Absolutely. And I end up getting a pretty decent opening hand to be a little aggressive, push a little damage. You'll see here with the Tear Asunder, giving the Dominate.
Yeah, like that's a good Tear Asunder turn. Even though like I'm like even though it's just a 5 Dominate, like getting that like on hit and he has no arsenal or way of defending it is like pretty good to like leak in damage.
Absolutely, and I don't expect him to take the bait, but I cannot resist giving the chance to get a block off the Skeleton so early, because based on the current build of Oldhim that I was playing, there's definitely a game plan for Viserai around the Expose the Elements card and ability for that to interact with Bloodsheath Skeleton and the linchpin that is for the Viserai deck. So going into this first turn, I really had it in mind. I want to give every chance possible to get that first block off Skeleton, so a single use of the Exposed is going to be able to blow it up.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And like definitely Dominate attacks just come in so handy for that, because they would have the temptations to just block with Skeleton all the time, but they definitely do risk like you exposing them while they're blocking with Skeleton, and that's like a game kind of win con for you essentially.
Yep, absolutely. So we see that he decides to block a little bit, but does take some, gets the Frostbite token, so that's going to be impacting potentially the redraw he gets on the cards.
What he'll do.
On my end, I was very happy to see the draws that I got here. Gives a viable rouse from hand play. And being aggressive early before Viserai really has a chance to set up is a very good place to be.
Yeah, and only that, you'll even have a Command and Conquer in hand, and an Arsenal, I should say.
So I get to show and play the one and kind of slow roll the Arsenal.
Enchanting Melody, that's interesting. I haven't seen anyone play that card like in recent memory.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since I've seen that card. But it definitely seems somewhat viable for the matchup, like extra block on
that is fair.
Some of these Dominate attacks and things can definitely be impactful. It's probably a little early for it to make a huge difference in the game at this point, but yeah, I was very intrigued by that card. After that, we just see him coming in with the simple Rosetta plus Rune Chant. He hadn't been able to build up enough that it made sense to start going down OTK route, so push a little damage where he can. Because of the hand I have, I do end up deciding to just take this damage. Generally, you want to minimize all possible damage against really Rune Blades in general, but that was an easy decision to take just 3 there, since it wasn't even the 2 and 2 off Rosetta. because I'm going to have such a big play coming.
True. Let's see, so now we got 7. Let's see how your opponent responds to this. If I'm not mistaken, too, if Enchantment Melody pops, it's kind of almost like an instant bubble, where even if you were to deal 1 point of damage, it would just kind of like go away completely. Is that right to say?
I believe if there's a way to push a single point of damage, it would pop the whole thing. It doesn't last through a turn the way the Oldhim defense reactability off Earth does.
Yeah.
And here, again, we see the obvious follow-up with the CNC that was shown off of the Rouse, but I thankfully get a follow-up one in Arsenal still.
True.
And I finally remembered to make a good Seismic Surge before having a spare resource at the end of my turn here, so...
Nice.
Getting a little better with this tectonic plating. I had started a lot on the Tunic plan, but I've been switching a little more to tectonic lately.
Fair enough. I definitely think I need to experiment a little bit as well with tectonic and Oldhim, but so far I've been liking Tunic way too much to like...
It's such a hard call, in my opinion. Like, they both do such good things in the right scenarios, and they just don't overlap enough to make it an easy choice.
Yeah, that is true.
Here we see the max rune chant growth out of standard tied into Read the Runes Red play. So I'm seeing near double digits already rune chants off of a slow start. So I'm starting to get a little bit worried, but I did draw into one of my expose the elements at a good time earlier in the game here.
True. Like, something that's also pretty good about expose the elements into this sort of like matchup, even if like your opponent, you cannot break their skeleton too, the opponent just being aware of the expose is also kind of a feels good thing, just because they're playing around it the entire game,
even
keeping one card in hand.
Some interesting gameplay and decisions around that coming up here. So we kind of talked over it a little bit, but the opponent did decide to block the CNC that was after that Rouse with the Skeleton, so it does have the counter already on it, so exposed is active to a double fuse.
Yep. CNC 6, 1 floating.
Yep, just going for a CNC with a fairly obvious pummel. But that's the hand you got. It's still a pretty good play. So I'll just stall another turn, get that exposed in Arsenal, and try to get something going from there.
Definitely. And how many are you running in this deck? Was it 2 or 3?
For this match, I was on the full 3. General theory, if you're testing something, you want to see it as often as you can so that you get the data. There's no point in playing a game if you never see the one of that you're trying to figure out if it's the right thing to do.
True. That's fair.
So yeah, pretty lengthy decision from my opponent here. Back-to-back CNCs against somebody that wants to Arsenal build up a go-off turn to get a ton of rune chants can be pretty disruptive.
Yeah, CNC plus Pummel is like a very good card against Viserai, just because like of how like for all we know like the Sonata could be in their arsenal, and they can't be overblocking either way because the Pummel's just always going to be threatening essentially.
Yep. And here I see some additional equipment block. Very happy to flush that out and getting the obvious overblock for the Pummel. Again, that's the great thing about the telegraphed Pummel. You're kind of happy whichever way they decide to go, because you either just get to do it again next turn, or you're really hampering their turn when they were trying to keep it.
True. Looks like we got 2 exposed here. No Earth yet, but...
Yeah, so here, Earth has been the issue with getting the play off, and discussing with some of the other guys on the team, this was a kind of interesting play. Part of what is happening here. So my opponent's going to have his turn, and I was a little too deep in the tank thinking and missed if he had 0 cards in hand or not. And so I actually say at the end of the previous turn, please wait a second before you draw up, because I'm thinking. And I decided after doing that, realizing he still did have the 1 card in hand, and moving on, since I had double exposed, I decided he probably is a caliber of player that would be aware of the answer to Skeletor, and having already said something about it, I went with the line of go ahead and pitch the one that I have in hand, make it look like I tried, but it wasn't the right time and I'm giving up on it, rather than, an alternative line would be to crown the one in Arsenal, play out the rest of the turn, Arsenal the one that was in hand, never showing it. But that line had the risk of, if I drew into a red, I would not be able to pummel. And that is a pretty sizable difference in the level of impact I'm having on the turn. So I ended up kind of going with the mind game play of go ahead and put it out there. Opponent definitely did make note of it, but either I get him playing around it and slow the game down from here, or convince him that I had it, didn't value it enough, moved on, and am trying to go with the pure aggro route. Again, the series of plays I had leading up kind of gave a little weight to that side of things.
Yeah, that was a very good turn for you. Like, especially like since him not any cards in hand, if you had drawn into a nice Enerf, you would have definitely gone to Skeletor. Like,
yep. But getting to pummel a Frostfang feels real nice. I do.
On top of that as well.
Like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, can't go wrong with that either, for sure.
Yeah, for me, the single cards that are still disruptive, the cards that can be played off of a single pitch, that are still disruptive, are very nice in Oldhim, in my opinion.
For sure.
So here I'm coming in with just another back-to-back turn of disruption, getting a good Spinal Crush attack off here. He's used enough equipment block that it's a pretty tough decision to try to keep enough cards to make good use of the go again. Basically going to eat up most of the rest of the equipment and a card if he wants to try to do it that way.
True. Let's see.
But that's basically where the game is at for me, is he got up to almost 10. He's at 8 at the moment. Rune Chance. I am on the race of drawing the Fuse hand to destroy Skeletor before he builds up enough and gets his Sonata off.
That's true. Like, yeah, like...
That's really the only thing that matters to me in the game at this stage.
Yeah. Viserai, like, yeah, like... just taking cards out of hand is just, like, so important. Because, like, it's just reducing the amount of ways you can produce those Rune Chants, potentially. And then you definitely want to slow that down as fast as possible. I agree.
When he's getting the value off a second card played in a turn, and on being able to make a second be the last is quite good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Viserai's OTK turn is just, like, so insane. Getting over 60 plus damage. Once it's realized.
It's pretty nutty. I did some gold fishing with it earlier this week, and I think 73 damage on a go-off turn was a max that I had. It's absolutely nutty.
Yeah. Oh, and he gets the read, and it's the read runes.
Yep. Thankfully a yellow, and it's not with a Mordred Tide, but now we're up to 12. Still low, but honestly, 14, if you get really lucky on the draws, is plenty enough to do it sometimes.
Yeah, like, I've definitely seen a lot of Viserai players just be very, very patient. Specifically into, like, Oldhim, like, even getting down to 1 life and just, like, bursting off at, like, 26 rune chance. And it's just, like, I feel like that's also another testament to Viserai players, in a sense, where they're, like, they have that sort of patience, which is, like, really rewards them at the end.
Yep. So here I get to basically do it all. I get to make a Seismic Surge because of the one I had popping to keep that train going. I get to pitch Oakenold with a Earth card, having recently pitched an Ice card to set up a good late game fused Oakenold, plus the blue pitch to pay for it on Glacial there. And I get to come in with a Righteous Cleansing, which hits pretty hard.
For sure. And if, like, you know, like, most likely your opponent will block it out.
Yep.
But, like, especially, like, if he doesn't, then, you know, like, Righteous is very good, especially Dominated, where you have a chance of getting their Sonatas or getting their key cards. That is just, like, almost like a semi-win con, in a sense, against Viserai, too. It's
Oh,
very
man,
good
it
card.
could be. If you, like, in the 5 cards, hit 2 Sonatas, get rid of both of them, that's just backbreaking.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you still have your access to your Command and Conquers. Especially if the Sonata is an arsenal over there, like, you can potentially get rid of all of them. In this case, though, your opponent blocks out, as he should have, and
Yep, there
you
I
take some damage in.
don't know why the cards decided to reorder, but I do have to fix the stacking before I put them under.
Hmm.
But what was I gonna say? Oh, right, yes, this is the hand where I finally draw into the proper fuse, so I'm going to be
Yeah.
instantly taking advantage of that when he plays the Read the Runes on an empty hand and take care of that Skeleton. And
Love it.
start breathing a little bit lighter.
Yeah. Now, at this point, the Viserai is just forced now to go into mid-range, essentially. And that's, like, now the uphill battle is on his hand.
Yep.
I would say.
And still, the only damage that I took was that very early raw Rosetta plus Runechant swing, so I'm at a pretty healthy life total.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. Especially with you having, like, Ramshead here, it's going to be very difficult for the Viserai to, like, leak damage in, like, through the course of the game.
Something else that I can just point out is I was surprised myself in the game how long I was on the front foot from the get-go, and not once did it feel correct to proactively use Crown of Seeds, where I flush, float 2 resources, draw another card, be able to do a bigger play. All of the hands I got while I was on the front foot there were very playable 4-card hands, plus the arsenal I already had. So I ended up not taking that line, but typically that is a line that I do quite like, and I think does quite a lot if you are able to do it at the right time on the front foot.
For sure. I'm definitely also going to, like, say Frostfang also has been seeming like an MVP too when it comes to that sort of aggression. It's basically almost like an Ice CNC in a way, as some people have described it.
Yeah,
and it's just, like, so good.
Pretty good way of summarizing. It just has that extra bit of disruption that is unconditional, unlike the Crush stuff.
Yeah.
It is a card that I'm very glad that was on a few people's radar in the team, and definitely picked that one up for this deck list.
Yeah, especially when you're wanting to have their cards just be empty. So, like, you having, like, 3 exposes and having an exposed in arsenal, like, it just makes it so much more easy for you to, like, break their Skeletta, since they will likely have no cards in hand, essentially.
Yep.
So it's very good.
Push damage, get rid of cards to make your next play even better. It's hard to argue with that.
For sure.
And here
He's
we
gonna
see
Sonata.
he was already set up with that Sonata in Arsenal, and it was probably the turn before an escape go off if he was really thinking that I would draw into another exposed. Because 15, I think, is that minimum range where you might be able to really get it, and that's better than losing the chance to do it sometimes. But thankfully, it worked out the way it did.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, here I think about the Oakenold pummel play, but end up deciding that this is gonna be, with the skeleton gone, it's gonna be his bigger attack turn, so there's no point in me thinking further in terms of trying to stay on the front foot. This is gonna be a defending turn.
Fair enough. Yeah, especially they still have the 15 rune chance. And yeah, just getting those out of the way, after that it's just much harder for him to deal damage after this turn. So yeah, I think that was the right call to be blocking out. Let's see. 15 rune chance. That's a lot still.
Yeah, and he had a couple of really good pop-off runechant growth turns. Does not take long if you get the cards to do it.
For sure. Let's see. Yeah, Meet and Greet 2 is just has a very nice on-hit effect. The go again is guaranteed essentially because of all that range of rune chance he has, but it's a definitely block on sight kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
and here that Staunch is kind of making the blocking decisions a bit difficult compared to normal. Plus having the Oaken, which I'm considering, do I try to save that as a single card, flesh out the arsenal, put that in, try to draw into another double fuse turn. But when in doubt, take the rune chance and try to stop on hit effects, because I'm gonna be taking Arcane.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this way you also get to keep your crown active for potentially the Rosetta, so you're able to block at the Rosetta. So that was a good call. Here too, yeah, you're afforded some ways of blocking. Thankfully, where you're also an advantage here is that you have access to all your equipment, but you also have Ram's Head as well, and that can also just help make a perfect 4 attack, a clean block essentially. Let's see, Crown also helps with that.
Yeah, being able to keep both Plating and Crater Fist unused until a moment where you need to block that critical 4-point attack that has an on-hit is
definitely
the kind of thing that swings a lot of games.
100%, yeah. Let's see. And is that a red meet and greet or a yellow?
It's a yellow meet and greet, so I only
need
okay. The 3 block.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. But now here we have the Rosetta.
So yeah, I will end up, I believe, preventing the rune chant, just kind of skipping over that step as I'm thinking what the other card might be and what I want my turn to be. Some of the decision is, again, around the, do I actually just play out a raw Oakenold, or do I ensure to save those for fusing to guarantee kills as we cycle through our decks?
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I would almost especially depending on how time is going, I almost would sort of lean towards just blocking out as much as possible, just because this is his big Pandora's box turn in a sense.
Yep.
And so after this, it's just the world is your oyster in a way, where you have that flexibility of I can win through attacking or the pressure, or blocking out is also almost just that guaranteed win, just because of your life total, and also just how it's very hard for him to get leak damage in at this point.
Yep. And again, I think especially because I was able to get through that turn and still save the equipment, I'm going for the higher upside play of arsenaling the Oakenold, waiting for the double fuse to get that off, and going with a simple hammer swing, not even with the ice active.
Of course. Yeah. Now you have an Oakenold. Like just set up stronger for next turn if you like, especially if you draw into like double fuse cards.
Yep, and I
Um,
believe, actually, I was
oh,
just about to say, because I couldn't remember if this was the turn or not, but I did make note of the fact I had not seen Pulse of Eisenloft yet. And we
perfect.
had gone through a
Okay.
good chunk of the deck, so this was an ideal draw to get off of that plan.
Oh yeah. Like it's definitely also times when like this, I'm very glad Oakenold just costs 3 because you're afforded to use like with a very blue heavy hand, just 2 cards essentially, to then like block and then keep the other 2 to play Oakenold and then fuse here.
Yep, and he comes in with the E-Strike for go again. I have the Staunch for it, and he just makes some Rune Chants. I'm pretty happy with that as the turn, getting to keep the 3-card hand that does a 9 dominate and eats half his hand.
Yep. Pretty good. Yeah, that was a perfect answer to what he was offering in that moment. Really well timed.
Yep. Quick discussion on life totals and the previous block on that, so it's gonna be, I believe, just the 3. I don't think he had the defense react in Arsenal here. So yeah, just telling him he can keep the middle one.
Yeah, Oakenold is like really crazy in the fact that like it's an on-hit effect versus like a criteria met like Crush with like Bravo,
Yeah.
where it has to be 4 or more. It's
If
like
it touches
very
you at
hard to block.
all, real bad
Yep.
things happen.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it only costs 3.
Yeah.
Pretty good card.
Like, with a single blue, you get to keep a seismic train going.
Mm-hmm.
Which works pretty well if you can get Oakenold fused into a follow-up Endless Winter that you get to play with a single blue because you kept the Tectonic Plating, or the Seismic Surge, rather.
True. Let's see. Crown. And this is during your turn, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe this is the first offensive use of the crown.
See.
Another reason I like the blue Earthlore Surges in the deck, they play very nicely into this plan.
Yeah, Crown and then like extra 2 floating would be that E-Strike for 8
You
is
basically
really
just get
cool.
to play it for free, you get to replace it with a different card, is one way to think of it, but I'm happy with an E-Strike for 10 here, set up a potential Rouse follow-up.
Yeah.
And just indicating the crown before he decides blocks, because I would be preventing a Sigil of Suffering block here. One extra bit of upside from using crown on your own turn in this kind of offensive manner against a Rune Blade.
That is true, actually. Sigil of Suffering. It's a good counter Sigil of Suffering. Very true.
So yeah, presenting pretty big hit, brought half my opponent's life total. He does like his hand, so he takes
took it all.
I was
Man.
very surprised to see that, because going down to single-digit life is pretty risky, so I expect a pretty sizable turn.
It is
Obviously,
a Mordred
starts
turn,
with Mordred,
so
and he is on 3 Rune Chants to start, so this could be a pretty good turn.
Yeah, 3 like Rune Chance is such a good number for Viserai.
Yeah,
it's like that magic number.
Rune Flash is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have
Oh,
a blizzard here. I don't know how much it'll end up shutting down his turn, but if it starts like this, I want to give it my best try.
there. We got.
And thankfully, the 3 Rune Chance makes Awakening effectively be a full block card, where it could have easily been a lot more clunky in the hand.
True. That's something I almost like a little bit about Oldhim is like that he makes, I think, no blocks work a little bit better than let's say Bravo, for example. And the reason being is like Crown, because if like you have like let's say 1 or 2 instances that have no blocking function, you can use it to Crown at the very least.
Yep.
And draw into another card to make sure it's not a dud hand, essentially.
That is a very good point. Crown is such a good card.
100%.
Like, it would be on par with a lot of the other equipment in the game if you could only use it on your opponent's turn. But like that whole other offensive side to it puts it out of the park.
Yeah. See, now for this turn, do you remember if you felt like you're definitely more inclined to just like block out and just kind of like almost like hold through the storm essentially? Because this is almost like
here I'm thinking I might be able to get away with keeping an E-Strike with these last 2 cards, depending on what comes next. If it's a Snatch or other 4-block with some hit effect, then I can use the pair of equipment to manage and keep those and keep the pressure going. So that's basically the hope at this stage and why I'm blocking the way that I did.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely made the right call of that, especially because Oldhim needs a card in arsenal like every turn. And given that this is like his kind of like strong pushback turn in a sense with like the Mordred and so forth, damage is bound to leak either way. But if you're just always securing that card in arsenal, like he will have just harder time leaking damage throughout the entire game. So I think that's a good call.
Yep, and based on some of that logic, I adjust the plan at this point and block with the single equipment +1 so that I do keep the arsenal going. If I take the other line, it's gonna be a 0 arsenal into his next turn.
Yeah, that was a good use of
it's tempting, but you gotta stick with the nature of the hero at times, and I think filling up that arsenal is one of the key things for Oldhim.
For sure.
Also worth pointing out, an E-Strike for 7 is not lethal, so that would make a potential for a take it all because he gets a god hand and I'm minus a good amount of defense with no arsenal, and thus, shield isn't as good, I don't get crown defense, like it just starts falling apart.
That would have been rough for sure. Like, yeah, thankfully too, with you, blocking the meet and greet, like it does prevent him from like having that 3rd rune chant, which is like such an even number. Like he still has 2, which is still good, but it makes his pitch potentially just a little bit more awkward. And here we go. He's just 9th laning and coming in for 2 arcane.
Yep.
See, yep. This is thankfully in like an easy block to do. It seems like you catch it pretty quick, I think.
Yep, just thinking through to make sure there was nothing that the second exposed would be good for, mostly centered on do I still need to be worried about creepers at this stage.
Fair. Oh, looks like he...
Yeah, those cards just did not want to agree with him there. It's just like my pitch stack earlier that decided to reorder itself.
Yeah, TTS can definitely have his situations for sure.
So here I do decide to go for it, because the alternative is just the hammer for 4, whereas this brings him down to 2, and I know that we are coming up on the setup Oakenold that I mentioned pitching earlier in that pitch stack, I believe. So here I want to keep the pressure on, give him the chance of going low enough that I get the follow-up kill.
Yeah.
But it was a bit high-risk play, but he had 0 rune chance going into that turn, which is what kind of became the deciding factor for me.
That is true, actually. Like an E strike for 7 with no rune chances, like I think a valid play as well. Like usually, like I think the safer one is probably just to like E strike for 5 and draw a card to secure an arsenal.
Yeah, that's
like,
a mode of the card that I probably don't use enough at times. I had the way I built my chain deck, which was what I focused very much on in the early days of playing the game back in Vegas calling era, but there it was almost never correct for me to do the draw, and I ended up taking the card out of the deck completely before Vegas, but due to the play pattern being a very aggressive style that I had, it didn't come up very often, so I tend to probably undercount that mode of the card.
No, that's fair for sure. And at the very least, 7 like definitely doesn't come off as like invalid just because no rune chance, as you said earlier, and it's like the block is relatively easy to do without rune chance in play, even without a card in arsenal. But so you leak damage in and still be able to block out this turn, for example.
Yep. And I still have 3 available block via equipment on top. If CNC was a Guardian card, this would be such an easy hand.
Yeah, sometimes I almost just wish CNC costed 3, and just just to kind of like I don't know, like I guess just to, and it'd be a Guardian card, just like for it to be
make it
more
ideal
like,
for Bravo.
Yeah, I guess just to make it like a little bit more ideal for Bravo, but
because if Terra Sunder could work off CNC, that would just be
that would be better.
Ridiculous.
The card would be better in Bravo, that's for sure. Yeah.
Make and if you don't change the cost, make a Seismic Surge, Terra Sunder into CNC, so your next turn cost reduction, plus you're killing their arsenal 2 cards from hand. It's got dominant, like...
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh man. CNC is like so much better though in Oldhim though. I will say that, even though I'm like not the biggest fan of it with Bravo at times, like it definitely has its place in Oldhim just because of the flexibility it has.
Definitely.
With like a lot of the cards.
So yeah, here I decide I'm not going for any sort of dominate play. I'm just gonna do an efficient block, make a Seismic Surge, and stay on the front foot since it's lethal.
Yeah, Viserai definitely like having a block with at least like 2 cards in hand to not have the arsenal destroyed.
Yep.
Definitely puts them on the back foot just because of
and
like
it's
how
either that
2 cards
or I get every single piece of equipment.
Yeah, that's true. But Viserai, yeah, like unfortunately can't do that much with 2 card hands, especially like compared to like, I don't know, let's say maybe Briar, like pre-banning that could have done a lot with 2 cards in hand, or Chain with only 2 cards in hand.
Very different, especially Chain. Like they could have an 8-card hand with those 2 to pay for it, depending on where in the game you're at. But yeah, again, here it's that the way the math works out that I definitely get creepers if he only does a single card block. And that creepers is one of the things I'm most scared of at this stage, with the life buffer I have.
Definitely. Yeah, creepers is like, yeah, is almost like his sort of like last kind of like this ditch effort in a sense, where it's
Yep.
like he can like do something with, and once that's gone, it's like, ooh, it does feel like game is just essentially over.
Yeah, I can't rattle off the top of my head exactly a scenario of cards that ends up killing me from there with it, but if there's something that will do it, creepers is gonna be involved in here, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely like shines with that OTK turn, which like Galetta like creates.
Yep, nothing like Mordred Tide into a Creeper's Mauvrin Skies for as many attacks as you ever want and everything on top.
For sure.
Rune Chants, extra go agains, everything.
Yeah. At this point too, I'm like forgetting what if your opponent even has any like big threats left to use at this point though.
I believe we only saw one Amplify, but he doesn't have the Rune Chants to make that particularly viable. We saw one, I think, only Ninth Blade, but again, same thing, not enough Rune Chants. In terms of the Read the Runes, I believe most of them are gone, but there should, I think, still be a red in there.
Nice.
But yeah, here we're basically at the end stage where I'm just trying to hammer home the last lethal damage, but it's all but certain in my mind that there's a defense react sitting there in that arsenal, so I do not think the next Oakenold is going to be true lethal. So I'm taking the lines that I can to try to best flush out that defense react in arsenal before I get to the Oakenold.
That is true. Like, if it's a reduced to Rune Chant, it at least looks a little bit more hopeful to attack. Even though, like, right now you don't have enough pitch to attack except E-Strike, but if it's a reduce, it becomes very awkward scenario for Viserai, because he has to take a card out of hand to play reduce.
Yep. Reduce with no Rune Chance is a very inefficient play to have to make.
Yeah, it's very feels bad when you're forced to play that card with no Rune Chance. I agree.
Gotta say, it feels a lot better to play a Staunch Response.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I play a hero that isn't Guardian, I do miss not having Staunch Response sometimes. I'm like, I want to block, but not the same way.
I just
Reduce is very good,
gotta
though.
cram unmovables and everything.
There we go.
Alright, so here I get that Endless Winter in Arsenal. I'm hoping that's a good flush card if I can pull it off. He has only a small hand, so I expect I should. Oh, I guess a yellow is in there. It was a yellow towards the end.
To reduce the Rune Pass, you have a full card hand. Yeah, so far it's looking
Yep, this was
good for you.
Pretty good. I get the ability to kind of choose which line I want to take to some degree, but we're not playing Channel Lake Frigid anytime soon at this point in the game. Endless Winter, 2 cards in hand, to float. I am calling the bluff of that defense react.
Yeah, and definitely if it is like especially a D react, and if it's like out of the way, you have an Oakenold in hand.
Yep.
That you will likely arsenal, and then you're very well set up to finish the game, especially getting your fuse cards potentially.
Yep, and those should be coming up very soon.
Nice.
Here, opponents just in the tank for a while. It's the end game, big attack coming. He probably was making some note of what I was pitching in the early stages of the game and is probably aware of the Oakenold coming up pretty soon. And even if, he doesn't know exactly which turn, this is kind of what to expect from Oldhim in the end game. There's going to be fused Oakenolds coming.
Like, definitely. Yeah, like, opponent taking time, which is understandable, like these are very important choices right now, especially this late in the game. Let's see.
Yep, decides this is worth the full block and keeping something back. I get to show him I have the pummel, and that gets the defense react.
There we go. It's out of the way. He gets a fourth rune champ, but yeah, like, you're probably like, feeling very comfortable now, like knowing that like that's out of the way.
That plus the Oaken in Arsenal, I'm feeling better and better as we go. And here it is, drawing.
There we go. The double fuse.
The double fuse.
And also like this is also like whatever line of play you want to do. It's almost like sort of like very comforting knowing you can afford to even take this damage and like still win, because almost sort of that reward for blocking out effectively as Guardian.
Yep.
For the win con.
I think that's the deciding factor of people that enjoy Guardian and those that don't, is the ability to find that level of joy in the end game that comes from that kind of defensive, doing it the right way throughout the rest of the game.
Definitely. With like, especially with like Bravo, it does definitely feel good getting to that like pitch stack and like knowing like your patience is kind of like rewarded through that kind of like like slug fest of blocking.
Absolutely. So yeah, here we get to pull off the double fuse Oakenold. I had flushed out that defense react, so it seemed like odds were pretty high that it would punch through. But opponent, again, I'm gonna take the assumption that it was an intentionally pitched set of defense reactions around here in the deck, since we've already cycled through, and he had the follow-up from the hand before to get in Arsenal, so this is not quite lethal. I've got to keep pushing.
D-Reacts in Arsenal is like so good against Guardian in general.
Yep.
It just like helps out.
It's kind of interesting how that works out, because in other matchups, Guardian's the one that's all about keeping those defense reacts in Arsenal.
I know. It's almost like fighting fire with fire in a sense. Like in the dash matchup, like I think the unmovables, they're like the bane of like Bravo's existence. I think just because of like how it's that perfect number 8.
It's basically a question of, is it an unmovable or is it a sink below in Arsenal? Because it's always one of them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Here I mistype on my keyboard, accidentally draw a 5th card. Opponent was very nice about it and said just put it back. Here I've got a fused exposed if I so chose, but there's no real point to that now. We're just pushing the damage at this stage. So here, a rare case of actually playing out the Polar Blast from hand does not come up all that often, but this is the type of scenario where you definitely will want to do it if you can. Just keep eating those cards. Yeah, not sure what we were discussing here, but
yeah,
I think something about the previous play.
Gotcha.
So yeah, let's see if I can get into anything a little more aggressive. Doesn't work out. So we'll flush a card. There's no way he can give me Dominate with 1 float, 3 in hand.
In a way, you made it serve as a winner's bite.
Yep.
In a sort of sense. Oh, and you got a Sonata out of hand. Let's see.
Turn an Icequake into a Winter Spite.
There we go.
And I will push the little bit of extra damage and actually play out the Autumn's Touch there. Again, just math kind of works out. If he wants to block 3, that means he gives me creepers to still live, or...
Yeah,
or
definitely
not.
going...
Whereas if I just did the Winter's Wail, he could still keep the creepers. Again, I don't think it truly matters at this point, but that still seems like a slightly higher upside, so let's play the correct line, is my thinking.
For sure.
He's low enough, I don't need to worry about needing that as an Earth card to cycle back around to for a fuse or anything.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely think like giving him those awkward numbers to decide in Block Whip definitely help you out. You already took 1 card out of hand, and he's gonna need to at least block 2 from hand, or like 1 from hand, and a creepers to just not die.
Yep, and then he's got a 3-card hand at most. I still have the 2 block on Tectonic. I have a card that I am fine flushing away with the Crown on his turn if he keeps an attack.
Get 2 cards out of hand. It's pretty good. And the opponent has no rune chance and 1 card in hand. He decides to Rosetta with 1 rune chant and 2 physical.
Yep. So here I've got the Earth side, but not the Ice side for an Okanold.
Yeah.
So gonna have to set that up for the following turn, ideally. But that is looking like the kill card at this point.
Definitely. You even also have like a Glacial Footsteps, which also like feels pretty good, especially if you draw into like an ice card and are able to dominate it for a good late game win con. Oh, and you draw into an ice card.
And here
there
we go.
Although
because the
wouldn't be
Okanold
enough,
is red,
yeah.
It's got to go the other way. But
that is true. Okanold, yeah, that's actually the play. That is for sure. Okanold dominated. Feels pretty good.
Yeah, because I'd have to use the ice to pay for the footsteps, but that's almost a 2 different ways you could kill scenario.
Definitely.
Just in case, who knows what might happen if he's got a red unmovable in Arsenal.
Just like that secret tech.
Yeah,
secret.
let's make a seismic surge. I'm sure I missed a good number of those throughout the game, but try to go off with a proper play using that as spare resource. And that is game.
Yeah.
So with that win, we were able to get into the finals of the Flesh and Blood Competitive Team League coming up this weekend on the Team Kitchen Fable channel here. Please like, follow, subscribe, and tune in for the finals on Sunday. Thanks, everybody.